Good evening, I'm Dean Beck, and it's my absolute pleasure to be with you for this first episode of a new series here on Ben TV. Now, it's rare to have the luxury of devoting an entire program to just one guest, but in each episode that is exactly what we will do. In profile tonight is a man who way back in January 2004 got married to his partner in Canada. Now, upon their return, they became the first couple to challenge the federal courts to have their overseas nuptials recognised here in Australia. He's humble, determined, disarmingly charming, and oozing with integrity. And his battle for equality remains to this day. So much so that he is the founder and leader of one of Australia's newest political parties. Now, he's planning to run for a Senate seat in the forthcoming federal election. In profile tonight is the leader of the Australian Equality Party, Jason Tuazon-McCheyne. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Dean. It's good to be here.
Jason, take us back to 2004 when you and your partner Adrian went to Canada and got married over there. Why did you do that, and why did you then make that stand in the federal courts?
Well, 4 years earlier, we had a non-legal wedding at Heide Museum of Modern Art with 80 guests. We just made it all up. We wanted to be married. And then when suddenly Canada had legislated for marriage equality, we thought, wow, somewhere in the world we can go to and get married. So we actually did two things on that trip. We went and were married at Toronto City Hall. And we also then stopped in LA and started the process to have our son Ruben, who obviously wasn't at that point our son Ruben, but
he was just a figment of your imagination.
And right. 2 years later he was born. So then we came home, and someone Adrian was working with at Melbourne University knew someone another female couple who are dear friends to this very day, and she's now the deputy leader of the party. We asked the family court to validate our Canadian marriages.
And how did that go?
Not very well, because it was an election year, and Mr. Howard and his government actually legislated the changes a week and a half before the first court date.
Is that was right time-wise? That's where it all happened.
And wrote it in such a way that our court case was there was no case to have.
Yeah.
And now, what are we, 11 years later, and we're still waiting. So I feel partly responsible for that, though it probably would have happened anyway. It was a big day.
Why is it important to you?
To be married?
Yeah.
Look, I know it's not important for everybody.
Sure.
That's okay. But for Adrian and I have been together 17 years, and our son is 9.5 now. We think we should be treated equally like everybody else. And at the end of the day, it's about owning language and space and being embraced as an equal.
Why do you need a society externally to justify your love?
Oh, they don't.
Right.
I mean, I'm happily married in my own mind. But the reality is we live in a country where you're allowed to still demonise LGBTI people if you have a particular religious belief, and it's okay. Or if you have a political belief, it's okay. If marriage equality is, once it happens, and there are other things that also need to happen, I think that cannot happen anymore. You can't demonise women publicly anymore. You can't demonise Indigenous people publicly anymore, even though there's racism, obviously, and sexism. We need to get to a point where we can't be demonised anymore.
There seems to be partly an evolutionary change going on. The younger people just don't care. And at one point in time, there's going to be that tipping point where there's more of them than there is of those who are hanging on to these older values. Why do we need to fast-track that?
So, as a marriage celebrant, so I do 70 weddings a year.
Ironically.
Marriage has evolved, and people are very much getting married as much as they ever used to. And it's not the same anymore. It's not about the woman being owned by the man as a piece of property. It's not about expectation to get married, because most people are in their 30s now. It's not even about, the rules have changed. It's about sharing your relationship publicly with your friends and family and celebrating that. But they also get some legal benefits as well. Now, I know that we have de facto laws in Australia, which is good, but the reality is we're still second-class citizens, and there's no reason anymore why we shouldn't have the right to be able to be married. And if we don't want to be married, that's fine too. There are de facto laws that take care of us. There's no right or wrong way to create your own family.
Those laws, we hear tragic cases of people on their deathbed and the partner not being able to provide the wishes of the dying individual, or left out of the hospital ward. Are we still doing that in this country?
Yeah, it's still happening, because if you're not married, you've still got to prove your relationship. And so it depends on who you get.
And next of kin have right of way.
Absolutely. I remember Adrian and I, when our son was conceived, we had to go and spend a lot of time on our wills, because suddenly we had a child and we had to make sure, and I remember once Adrian being sick in the hospital, it was 10 years ago now, and they said to me, kept saying to me, so who are you? You're his brother? I'm like, no, this is my husband. And they kept saying, you're a brother? And my husband is Filipino, Australian. We don't look like brothers.
No, you don't. No.
And as they were injecting him with something to stop him from vomiting, I'm like, I'm not his brother. And it just, look, there are things that need to change. And we hyphenated our last names just to make sure there were less issues around, who's Ruben's parent and who we are. Because we've been separated in immigration lines travelling overseas before because we had different names.
You have this beautiful son, Ruben, who's how old now?
9.5.
Tell us briefly how that process was for you, because it's not easy to have a child by surrogacy overseas.
No, it wasn't. And we were the 4th or 5th people in the country to do that. And I remember going to a Rainbow Families conference at the Arts Centre back in 2000, and Anthony Wood was there talking about how they were in the process of having their now son Zan, who's like 11 or 12. And we were like, wow, can we actually have our own family? And that planted the seed, and we always thought if we had a son, we'd call him Ruben, which is after Adrian's father. And then on that trip to get married, we met with Growing Generations in California, and I remember walking out into the lovely LA sun. It was like 25 and sunny, and Adrian said to me, this is impossible, we can't do this. And I said, well, nothing's impossible. And 2 years and 1 month later, Ruben was born. So,
wow.
Yeah, I'm a bit crazy. But the two pieces of paper that I love the most are our marriage certificate from Canada and our birth certificate for our son, and both of us are on the birth certificate. And to me, that's pretty special, because I grew up my entire life, I didn't come out till I was 28, thinking that there was no family for me, both as in regards to having a partner or children, and I'd have to forever be hiding who I was. And that, in a very quick space of time, changed.
We are with Jason Tuazon-McCheyne. He is my guest in Profile tonight. He's the leader of the Australian Equality Party. Please stay with us. We'll be right back after this. You're watching Bent TV. My name is Dean Beck, and if you've just joined us, welcome to the first of a new series as we delve deep to get to know some of the leaders of our community, the movers and shakers. And they are by far the ones creating the change within the LGBTI community. Now, in Profile tonight is the man who founded one of our nation's youngest political parties. He's the leader of the Australian Equality Party. Welcome back, Jason Tuazon-McCheyne.
Thanks, Dean.
Jason, we were talking about the arrival of your beautiful son earlier. Let's go back a little bit to your formative years. You studied to become a minister of the church, not just any old church.
Yes, I spent 4 years, or almost 6 years, in Missouri in the US doing a theology degree, and was ordained as a minister when I was 20 years of age. Yeah, a bit crazy, isn't it?
Your arc has taken you away from the church. Tell us a little bit about that and why.
Well, I didn't grow up in a Christian family. A piece of paper blew up our driveway advertising a local boys club. Literally. My mum sent me to this local church in Thornbury, and some really good people there really looked after me, and I had a really good time there. Was baptised, I think, when I was 12, and always, for me then, my spirituality was very important to me. So it was sort of natural progression to go and study, live overseas for a while, but all the time, since I was like 4 or 5, I knew I was gay. So when I came home to Australia in '96, I was a youth pastor for a couple of years, then I started my own church and met Adrian in '98, and came out to my leadership team individually, and they were all like, this is great, no worries. And then suddenly one day I got a telephone call to say, we don't want you to lead us anymore. And that was it.
The founder of the church, get out.
Yep. And it was a telephone call.
Wow.
I didn't have any energy left at that point to fight that, because Adrian watched, he is not religious, he came from a Catholic background, but he watched all these people just be pretty awful to me over a year and a half.
And we're talking a Pentecostal, evangelical...
Protestant, not Pentecostal,
right, okay.
but like Church of Christ, Baptist-y type background. And I remember Adrian actually even wrote me a prayer, it's in my wallet right now, it's an old piece of paper from '98 that said, you know, for me, which was sort of saved me. So in funny sense, Adrian saved me when the church almost
cast
killed
you
me.
adrift, yeah. So where is your faith now? Where is your belief in God or spirituality now?
I don't know what I believe anymore.
Okay.
I want to... the Jesus person, I think, was an historical figure who said some pretty interesting things that I don't see very many of his purported followers doing.
Sure.
I don't see them selling everything they have and giving it to the poor. I don't see that happening.
Standing up for those that are most marginalised?
No, I don't see that. So I don't know what I think anymore, and it doesn't really matter. But I certainly love the connectedness aspect, and I think I enjoy doing weddings as a celebrant and funerals and namings because they're really important transitional points in people's lives.
Sure.
And I enjoy that. But yeah, I don't know, to be honest.
So do you still get some of that kick by performing the services that you do as a celebrant?
Yeah, absolutely. When
Right,
I did a ceremony the other day, just a month or so ago, with a couple who've been together for 35 years. He's got motor neurons disease, so he's in a bed and can only wink and cry. And his 20 family and friends and his wife and 2 teenage children. We have this ceremony, and it was just, everyone was sobbing halfway through when he burst into tears, and I feel really honoured to be able to be a part of those moments in someone's life.
Absolutely. And it's great to be able to be invited in and, I guess, do the things from a non-religious perspective
Absolutely.
that you do.
And
you
it's
know, do the
free.
same things, but from a non-religious perspective.
And it's better.
How
because,
so?
Oh, it's free. And you're celebrating the couple.
Free from the crap, you mean?
Yes,
or?
absolutely.
Right,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. No, and it's free, and it's whatever the couple want, and it's about the persons involved and those communities involved, and it's really nice. Like
Yeah.
I bump into couples, 1,000 couples I've married all over the place, and I love it.
So how have you, I guess, or why have you started the Equality Party? Because in a way it's got, well, any political party has to evangelise, has to proselytise. Are you using some of those skills in putting your political party together?
I do think that, I did feel that as a 45-year-old man, sadly, that all the skills and life experiences have come together at this point that have put me in a good position. But we started 2 years ago, literally like last week. The first conversation was after the last federal election, when it became obvious on a federal level, and at state level things weren't happening either, that things weren't progressing fast enough for LGBTI people. And I was with the same couple that I went to court with back in 2004, and another female couple with kids. So our 6 kids were running around between us, and the 3 of us couples were there as well. And I said to them, we're talking about rainbow families and some different things, we need an independent voice inside the federal parliament who tells our stories and speaks for ourselves. And they sort of laughed at me first. Like, what are you mean? You want to go into politics or something? But by the end of that 3-hour casual afternoon, the Equality Party was born, no name, nothing else except the idea, and that was September. And we then that did a lot of research, and that February launched at Pride March, which was fantastic.
There's plenty of lobby groups that advocate on our behalf as an LGBTI community. Why do we need a political party in there doing it?
The lobby groups are amazing, and the work they do, I salute these people that I feel so honoured to have gotten to know all these people over the last 2 years in particular. But we need to actually be where the decisions are being made. So if we have someone inside the parliament, so right now if you're an elected representative, you get to speak on the radio, on the television, in the newspapers about whatever you like.
Pretty much.
We don't have somebody in there speaking our stories, whether it's a transgender story or an intersex person story or an elderly LGBTI citizen story, or a teenager in school, or a lesbian parented family, whatever our stories are, we don't have that in there. And I really believe it's stronger now even than 2 years ago, that if we can get in next year, we'll have 6 years to tell our stories and to really advance the things beside marriage. Like, marriage is important, but we've come up with 30 pages of policy that needs to happen for LGBTI people to be fully included in Australian society.
Jason Tuazon-McCheyne, leader of the Australian Equality Party, is our guest in Profile tonight on Bent TV. We'll be back with you right after this. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with Bent TV. Please visit our website, Twitter, YouTube channel and Facebook to find the different ways you can support Bent TV, provide feedback and become involved in supporting Bent TV. Back after this break. Welcome back. Dean Beck with you on Bent TV. And my guest in Profile tonight is Jason Tuazon-McCheyne, who, apart from starting his own political party, has also recently founded a football fan club called the Purple Bombers. What's that about?
Well, that actually started before the political party started.
Oh, okay.
And then because of some other things that sort of didn't happen for a while.
You're a mad Essendon supporter, aren't you?
I'm a mad Essendon fan, yes. Loved them all my life. And up until recently, have always felt excluded as a gay fan and been afraid to even sort of be myself. And I've sat at the football and heard people yell out in stereo behind me, you know, words that really hurt. And so I approached the football club and asked them a year and a half or so ago, what can you help us establish a Pride game? I'd love them to be a part of the first Pride game, which they're in the equation for, but also to establish a supporter group that would help make the AFL a safer place for LGBTI fans and players. And they jumped on board straight away, and I got to do a press conference with Brendan Goddard before the Sydney game, which was pretty fun.
Yeah, it means nothing to any of us. No. But what is important is you told, I remember you telling a story, a wonderful story actually, about taking a transgender friend with you to the football. Would you share that with us, please?
Yeah, so I was on air earlier this year, and a friend of mine, I won't say who it is, but she was talking about how she had some tickets to go to the football, but was afraid to go. And it was for the Bulldogs, not for the Bombers. And some other things that she couldn't even, you know, go to her children's school and be herself fully. And that broke my heart. Like, I'm so glad that the school where Ruben is broke my heart, actually. I'm in tears. And I just said to her, when's this game? And I was free that evening. And I was a bit afraid too, because it's not the safest environment, hasn't been. And so we met up and went to the Bulldogs West Coast game back in round 1. And I think we were both a little bit nervous, but it was great. Okay. I will say this though, she barracks for Essendon now. And she's been to 5 or 6 Essendon games with my family over the season, because why barrack for the Bulldogs when you can barrack for us? And the Essendon Football Club
isn't it like changing faiths or something?
But she wasn't really a Bulldogs fan, but I gave her one of my Guernseys, and and Essendon support full inclusion for us, and so that's been really good. But I was a bit nervous, and now and she's helped me be braver too.
The Essendon Football Club is very much behind what you're doing with the Purple Bombers, and we've seen examples of it with the Pink Magpies. But why is it that we are still no further down the road with regards to the sport itself, the code, really getting serious about homophobia?
To be honest, I think it's got to do with the leadership of the AFL. There hasn't been a strong will to do that, and it's had to come from a grassroots pressure upwards. And so all the different people and players and groups and organisations who've done something, I applaud them, and the Pink Magpies have been amazing. There's now the Rainbow Swans and the Blues Roos, and
right.
And part of our objectives was to help all 18 clubs to have a supporter initiative. But we want a Pride game next year, and I think that's going to happen. And hopefully it's St Kilda versus Essendon.
But that won't be the be-all and end-all either. I mean, it'll be an awareness thing for the crowd, and it'll be broadcast, and so it'll get that awareness as well. But in each example that I've seen the AFL do a little bit, there's been a lot of negative reaction.
The only
all
abuse that I've actually
areas.
copped online and social media has been from the Purple Bombers stuff.
There you go.
And it's very offensive and it hurts.
They don't hold back.
No, they don't. But if we don't agitate for the change, it won't happen. And there are processes being put in place inside football clubs and inside even the stadiums now about respecting each other.
But I think that reaction that you've experienced is because of the lack of leadership from the top.
Absolutely. And there's been no accountability. You've been allowed to, I remember, it wasn't long ago we could say racist things at the football. It wasn't long ago that we could be very sexist. We probably still can. You kick like a girl.
Until they worked out that there were more females going to the sport than there were.
It's funny, but I went to a grand final women's lunch the other day, and even some of the male comedians who were there were talking about their testicles and peeing and stuff, and I thought, well, it's so endemic. That the change is so endemic. Look, the legal changes don't change anything on some level. But the good thing about Australia, at least, because we had to wait so long and we're still waiting for these changes, at least on a grassroots level, there's lots of education going on and people doing the right thing and bringing the change in everyday life. That means when the legislation catches up, at least we're hopefully on board.
Equality is a pie-in-the-sky, unachievable aim. Why call your party the Australian Equality Party?
At the end of the day, we all deserve to be at the same starting line before you start. And right now, we're not all the same starting line. Some of us are 100 metres back. Some of us are 100 metres ahead.
Some didn't get invited to the race.
No, they're in the stands, it's true. And I think as part of the egalitarian nature of our country, and I'm proud of that we can actually help everyone be at the same starting line. Then what happens with your life may be determined by how hard you work or what you do. But where you're born, what your gender is, what your sexuality is, what your racial background is, what your financial situation is, you deserve, I believe, to be treated equally. And so that's why we called it that, because it's more than just marriage equality. It's about full inclusion for us, but also we can then, I think as gay people and lesbians and transgender people and intersex people, we can actually lead and use our own personal experience to give us the energy and the motivation to go, actually, we can stand for other people who have suffered inequality as well.
Legislative change is only part of the equation. The rest is cultural change.
That's right.
And that, I guess, is about empowering the LGBTI community to stand up and lead that too.
And I think we have, right? But I think the biggest changes in the last 10 or 11 years has been the fact that most of us now are out in our world. So I know people not that long ago who were not out in their workplace. And I think that's brought the biggest change, because there's nothing wrong with us. And we're everywhere. And we're somewhere between, depending how you define sexuality, 3 and 15% of the population. And it's that's been the biggest change. And because we are people who deserve to be treated equally, and they're, unlike the religious people who believe otherwise, there is actually nothing wrong with us.
Well, we've got a little way to go yet before we get there, but with you at the helm, I have no doubt that you'll be fighting the good fight all the way through. Jason, thank you very much for being our first In Profile Tonight guest, and good luck with the federal election in 2016.
Thanks, Dean, very much.
Join me right here on Bent TV in a few weeks' time, as I'm joined by yet another very special leader from within the LGBTI community. I'm Dean Beck, and thank you for watching us In Profile Tonight on Bent TV. Bye for now.